Hey, welcome to week 12 of SOL Prep. We are going to be studying today square roots and cube roots, how to evaluate and how to simplify them. Before we go into our lesson examples, we're going to be seeing a sample problem here to show how we're going to be doing these using our calculator. Here they're asking you what the value of the square root of 32 is in simplest radical form. And here's a keyword. It has to be the simplest one. So we go get our calculator and we evaluate what the square root of 32 is, and we get second, and then this button here to put the square root symbol for the 32. That is a 5.65. We write that number down. Next, we're going to evaluate all of our 4 multiple choice answers and see which one of these best matches the decimal that we got for our original problem. So we're going to evaluate the square root of 8 square root of 2. So you put the 8, then the square root second, and square root should show up, 2, and you get this decimal. That one doesn't match. Let's try the next one, 2 square root of 8. Here you get the same decimal as in our original problem. You might be tempted to say, okay, my answer is B, but we need to keep going, and here's why. We're going to try now 2 square root of 4. 2 square root of 4. Write down that decimal or answer. Clearly this does not match, but let's try the last one. 4 square root of 2. And write down that answer. So now you evaluate your options. Clearly option A is not it, because it does not match this number, and option C is not it. But you might be confused now because both options B and D match the decimal that we're supposed to get. So how do we pick? Here's the keyword, simplest radical. Which one is the simplest radical? You have a square root of 8 and a square root of 2. The simplest one is the 2. So you should select option D as your answer. So I wanted to illustrate why it's important to keep going evaluating every single one of your multiple choice answers, even if before reaching the end you find one that matches. That may not be your final answer. So following that strategy, let's start looking at our first sample problem. Here they ask you what is the written simplest radical form, which one is equivalent to the square root of 24. We're going to follow the same method. Try square root of 24 in your calculator, write down that decimal, and then try out all your multiple choice answers. This one matches. Let's try the next one. 2 square root of 2 does not match. So you can scratch that one out. Try the next one. 4 square root of 6 does not match, so you don't need to consider that one. Try the next one. 4 square root of 2 also does not match. So sometimes they don't have more than one that matches what you're supposed to get. In those cases, it's easier to pick your answer. This is the same kind of problem, but expressed in reverse. They give you the simplified version, and they want you to find which one of these options was the original one. The strategy is the same. You enter the 5 square root of 10 and write down the decimal that you get for that. Try out all your options. Square root of 2500, you get a 50, which does not match, so you scratch that out. Try the next one. Square root of 250. That one matches, so you write that one down and then try the next one, square root of 50. That does not match what you're supposed to get, so you can scratch that one out. And finally, square root of 500, which does not match, so your selection here is easy. Only square root of 250 matches the decimal you get for the original. Here they ask you to find the radical expression, in other words, the square root expression, which is equivalent to, in other words, matches this original problem that they give you. We're going to still use the same strategy of evaluating our original and then evaluating all the options to see which one matches. But now that we have variables, we need to assign values to the variables. What that means is that you're going to pick values for x, y, and z. Because this does not have an equal sign telling you what number it's supposed to equal to, these variables are free to become whatever you want. That's the definition of variables. They are not fixing that to a particular value, so you can choose what value to fix it to. So let's say x is 3, y is 4, and z is 5. Now that I have my values for x, y, and z, I am going to type this into my calculator to get an answer. So I type 50 x squared, y to the 7, z to the 8, all that inside the square root. Always double check that what you have typed is exactly what the problem shows, because if this step is wrong, you're never going to find one of these that match. So you hit enter and you write down your answer. Once you have that, you're going to check each one of these options in your calculator to see which one matches this number that you got for the original problem. So let's try typing the first one. After you type this in your calculator, you always double check with the option A, whatever's written down there, because if just one of these letters or numbers is wrong, the whole problem will be wrong. I can't stress enough how important it is to double check that you've typed it in exactly the way it's shown. Hit enter, and this one happens to match, so I'm going to write it down. Now we learned before that we're not going to stop even though it matches. We're going to check all of them to make sure we chose the actual simplest one. Let's try the next one. There, I've typed it. I always go back and double check that I typed it the same way. Hit enter and get an answer. This answer does not match what I have here, so I'm not going to bother writing it down. Obviously it's not my answer. Try the next one. There it is. Double check that it's written the same way and press enter. This number does not match what I have here, so I do not even write it down. Don't consider it. Try the last one. Last one, double checking that it's typed exactly the same. And again, this number does not match what we have here, so we have confirmed that the first option that we got, in fact, was the correct answer. You select that one. In this problem, they ask you which one is equivalent to the cube root of 40 in simplest form. We're going to use the same strategy. The only difference now is that we have a cube root, so we need to remember how to access the cube root. To access a cube root in your calculator, remember you're going to press the math button, and right down there on the fourth one down, you should see the cube root. So you select the fourth one and then enter your 40. You're going to write down the answer that you get. Now all you have to do is check all your 4 multiple choice options and write them down if they are matching. This one matches. Let's try the second one. Remember, it's math, cube root right in there. And if your answer does not match, you're not even going to consider it. Move on to the next one. A cube root of 5 does not match my answer, so I do not consider it. Try the last one. 4 cube root of 2. We get a different answer from what we have here. So again, our option here was option A. Here they're asking us to identify each expression that is in simplest radical form. They're not giving us an initial problem for us to match which one of the 4 given options is the matching one. So this strategy is a little bit different. You have to actually know which ones are in simplest form and which ones aren't. Remember that when you have a square root, you are removing from inside the radical anything that's a group of 2. In other words, that it has an exponent of 2 or more can be simplified out. So the first thing you do is look for anything that's inside the square root. So those groups inside the square root, anything that has an exponent clearly of 2 or more, like for example here, this has an exponent 3, this has an exponent 4, those should be able to be simplified. So that's not in simplest form. Remember that they want the ones that are in simplest form. So already we can scratch out this as an option. Then we need to look at the remaining ones to see if any one of these factors have something with an exponent of 2, or they can be rewritten with an exponent of 2. Remember your perfect squares. These are the numbers that we're going to be looking for inside our square roots, or numbers that can have these as factors. Remember, if you do not remember your perfect squares, you can always go to y equals, type in x squared, and then go to the table. You see it written here in blue? You have to press the blue button to get there. Go to your table and it tells you that 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 15, 5 squared is 25. So this table shows you the list of perfect squares that I've written down here, in case you don't remember them. So you go one by one checking the numbers. So what we're going to do with these perfect squares is check in each one of our remaining options if any one of these numbers, and they continue of course, can be used to multiply them times some whole number to get, for example, in this case, a 50. So we start with the 4. 4 times some whole number to get 50? No, I don't think so. Let's try. 9 times a whole number to get a 50? No, that doesn't work. How about 16 times some whole number? Nope, that doesn't work. But 25 times the whole number 2 does provide a 50. So the 50 has a factor that is something with an exponent of 2, and anything with an exponent of 2 or more we know can be simplified out. So therefore this is not in simplified form. We move on to the next one. Inside the square root, there's only an x. The x does not have an exponent that's 2 or more. Therefore, I would select this as something that is in simplest form. Lastly, a 2. How can I obtain a 2 and multiply one of these options times something to get a 2. I don't think I can multiply a 4, 9, 16, or anything bigger times a whole number to get a 2. So 2 must not have one of these squared numbers in it. So it is simplified. It cannot be taken out. The x and the y also do not have an exponent that's 2 or more. So this also satisfies the criteria that is in simplest form, because none of the numbers or letters inside it have an exponent of 2 or more in it. So you would select the 2 middle options here as your options that are in simplest form. This option is like the ones we saw at the beginning of this video. They give you an original problem here, and you need to choose which expression simplifies to this. This is the same as the multiple choice options, except instead of giving you the options as multiple choice, you will have to use your cursor and click on the ones that you select as your option. So because we have an initial problem that we can evaluate, what we need to do is look at the variables that it has. It has x's and it has y's. So we're going to assign values to x and to y. Let's choose easy numbers. Start with 3 or more. So you have a 3, and let's call y a 4. And we go to our calculator and store the 3 into the x. So that would be 3 store x. So the calculator knows that's what we're using for x. And then you press for store y. Remember that for the y you have to hit alpha and then the button that has a green y. And now that those values are stored, we're going to find out what this expression is equivalent to. Start typing, and it's very important for you to notice that this is a cube root. Do not type it as a square root. It is a cube root. So you press math and then number 4, and then keep typing your x, y squared. Make sure that it matches exactly what you have here, and you press enter to get your answer, which you write down. The next thing you do is type in each one of these options. Remember, they are cube root. So enter your cube root and then the rest of the expression, you hit enter. This number does not match what we got here, so we're not going to select that as our option. We're going to try typing in the next one. Make sure it's typed the same way and hit enter. Again, the answer that we get here does not match we have here. So we scratch that out and we try the next one. Always double check that you've typed it in exactly the same way. And this answer does not match what we're supposed to get, so we're not considering that one either. After I've double checked that I typed it in correctly, I hit enter, and now I notice that the answer that I get does in fact match the answer that I get here. So I would select this as my option. In your computer, when you take the SOL, you will need to use your cursor and just click on it to highlight it and select.